You're watching FRCD on CAN TV. Family Resource Center on Disabilities is the Region 1 Parent Training and Information Center of Illinois. You can reach us at 312-939-3513. Email us at info@frcd.org or visit our website at www.frcd.org. You can follow us on Twitter at FRCDPTI and subscribe to our YouTube page at FRCD1231. We also encourage you to like us on Facebook. Family Resource Center on Disabilities is not a law firm or a legal service agency. Family Resource Center on Disabilities will not provide any type of services that may be construed as practicing law, including but not limited to giving legal advice, drafting legal documents, or representing families in any type of legal proceeding. Hi, my name is Paula Wills, and you're watching FRCD on CAN TV, where we discuss special education, parent advocacy, and resources for families of children with disabilities. And today I am happy to welcome back my colleague and friend, Zabita Pasha.
Hi, Paula.
Hi, Zabita. Thank you for joining us again today. And today we're going to be discussing related services in terms of the IEP process. Last week, if you remember, we discussed components. We started the conversation on components of the IEP process, and we kind of zoomed through related services. So we want to go back and kind of dig in a little bit deeper so that families can kind of understand what related services are and how they work in terms of the IEP. So Zabita, if you could kind of, I guess, begin by explaining to us, what do we mean when we say related services when we're talking about the IEP process?
So related services, it is embedded into specially designed instruction by providing those services to make sure that the student or the child with a disability is going to be successful in accessing general education curriculum. Right. So the definition of the related services mainly that we deal with and we know of are physical therapy if the child needs it, occupational therapy if it is needed, and speech, counseling, social work, nurse services are also related services, and transportation. So there are other components. Sometimes people, when they are talking about related services like social work, it will support the child who are dealing with some social emotional issues.
So in terms of, and I want to apologize, we did leave off medical and transportation off our beautiful little
it's a very nice
related
visual
service cloud. Thank you. But in terms of social work, could you kind of give us a description of like what could that service look like as to a child that's receiving it, and when we're explaining this to parents?
Sure. The social work services are provided for those who needs it and who have a unique need into the social emotional, either disability or that is impacting that area of a sort. An example of my child who has autism. The social emotional component, she does not relate to certain topics that is embedded in conversation. So I'm going to talk a little bit, on two in one portion. She does not relate in a conversation. She does not engage in conversation. She does not initiate conversation. Okay. So her social emotional is very much lacking. She's a loner, for a better term, but that is not good. So she is a teen. She needs to be involved. We have to prepare her for the real world. So the social worker is helping that piece of engagement with peers. Basically, we are doing those things so she can engage a conversation. She can look at a person when they are talking to her and to kind of understand the social arena. There is a lot of layers when we talk about social emotional. Right. These are particularly for my daughter. There are types of social work that I have seen when children have and dealing with mental illness, and it is so hard because it is invisible, and those kids having difficult times within, so they need to go to the social work worker and talk about their feeling. Identify what is bothering those kiddos for them to have a behavioral spike. I'll give you an example of a kid that may have anxiety or mental illness of a sort and refusal of work just because that work is so difficult for me, and instead of saying difficult and I don't understand it, they just refuse and push that paper or leave the room or leave the seat, and that is a disturbance, to their peers. So the social worker will help them say, look, if you have a difficult time, you have to tell the teacher, I don't understand, and they would help you. These are very simple.
So these might be minutes out of a day where they might go see their social worker, or it may be written in their IEP
based on what they need.
Yeah. So and I'm glad you continue to point out if that's what the person needs, because these are very individualized services.
Correct.
So not every student with an IEP necessarily needs a social worker in the same capacity.
No, it is based on the need and how the disability is adversely impacting that student. We have to keep in mind that the disability must adversely impact the student learning academically, functionally, and socially.
Right.
Sometimes there are parents who call us, students are a student and no problem academically, or with their performance at least academically, but socially they are not able to make relations. They are not able to engage in conversation. But what makes us a human being? We have to have that wholesome package as a human being to be able, okay, the smart is there, the ability is there, but how I'm going to apply all of that knowledge if I am not able to have relations or talk to a friend, go out, engage in conversation. A classroom is full of kids. You cannot imagine a kid by themselves. Yes, they are smart, but they are not engage in physical, activities when they are in gym. They are not engaged in activities.
And you bring up a good point about the real world. Kind of fast forwarding a bit to transition,
Yes.
Graduation. How many of you have gotten jobs from people you know? How many, you really, if possible, have to build that social circle, and being able to engage with, different people is an important component of that.
You are very right, Paula, and you're bringing up a very important and relevant point within the transition going to high school or exiting the high school.
Right.
That social aspect is all the time relevant. Look at us when we do email. We start by saying hello or hi to the person. That's a social aspect.
Social cues.
Social aspect within the email, within every function that we do throughout the day. So social work does not necessarily focus only on that. They have also the emotional, where they help those who have emotional difficulties, like identifying what is bothering me. It is very important, instead of just having a meltdown and here we go with a behavioral issues or some consequences for those who have those significant needs with behaviors, can be suspension, can be, and that is missing out instruction. Main thing that we focus on is to help the parent understand and navigate so their children access the appropriate, and I am going to highlight again, appropriate. That's a key word when we're talking, either we're talking or writing about our children and their services. So social work, it's really a spectrum that has many layers, and we'll not say spectrum because there is the social, there is the emotional, and based on the need of the student, which one he would need.
So that kind of falls under counseling. Could we say that?
It is / counseling, but there is also a component of counseling for those who are in high school and they need, okay, do I need to do the honors? Am I able to do the APs? And I have an IEP? What do I need? So they need to go to counseling.
Could you briefly talk about that? That is an issue that commonly comes up, that just because you may be getting good grades, or as you said, you may have all honors classes, that you may not need an IEP or you may not need certain services. Could you kind of identify that? I know that's his own show, but if you could kind of...
I will highlight that the IEP is provided for those who needs it.
Okay.
There are students who has IEPs, but again, the ability to perform academically is there. It does not prevent them from getting the honor classes like non-disabled peer or getting the AP classes with non-disabled peer.
Right.
It may be a component of attention that is not okay, or a social emotional component that is not okay, and they need that counseling and social work support. So, or those who are on honors and AP classes, but they have certain difficulties throughout the day. So where do we start? Is that process of evaluation request and go through
Right.
the motions to get to the IEP portion.
Yeah, and basically, as you point out, issues that adversely affect their education.
That is correct. That's the key, and that's the bottom line for services to be provided to any student. And their IDEA, of course.
Exactly.
We have to complete.
So, I kind of want to move on. If you could talk to us a little bit about physical therapy and occupational therapy, and kind of what are the difference between the, first of all, what are they, and what are the difference between the two? That's like 5 questions in one, Zabita. Now
That's
go.
fine. That's fine. Let's go. Elevator speech. The physical therapy and occupational therapy, they fall under the functional needs of a student.
Okay.
Physical, it says it all. It's based on the physical inabilities of a child that have those difficulties physically. Possibly the gross motors are not there. Possibly unable to walk and climb the stairs. Many scenarios within the physical therapy. But I put them both under the umbrella of functional skills because that's clearly going with the functional skills and how the body works and the coordination and what have you. Occupational therapy is strictly functional skills that target the gross, fine motors, coordination, and other things within that area specifically.
So when you say fine motors, are we talking, for example, maybe holding a pencil?
Holding
or?
a pencil, writing on the line is a functional skill that requires coordination and fine motor skills.
Okay.
So when a student is struggling to write, first of all, legible handwriting that I have to read and can read, sizing is important. These are very important things that we need to focus on. Sometimes the kids may have those difficulties with fine motors, but can be addressed by accommodations.
Okay.
Put a little, there are little tokens that can be put on the pencil, for example, like the weighted pencil, a little devices that they can put within the pencil that can give that support to the kid if they have those fine motor skills deficits. But these two things are addressing the functional needs of the student in order for them to be successful in accessing general education curriculum. Now we are going to talk about something else that you may not brought up, because there is one curriculum for all students.
Okay.
And for our babies with disabilities and those who had an IEP, the general education curriculum basically may be modified depending on the need. So these two things, physical and occupational, is provided, for the kids to access those, to access the curriculum successfully.
Okay, because we often get into the areas. Actually, before we even go into that, I'm going to ask you to kind of discuss speech therapy.
Sure. Speech therapy will address the communication needs of the student. Now, I have heard in many conversations the communication needs, speech impairment, they are all kind of within the same umbrella. Again, it's like a spectrum, and there are many components and layers. So speech therapy will address the communication language impairment, or I should say communication impairments or disorders that can adversely impact the student to speak, be understood when they speak, to understand, and that is receptive language, and when they speak, that is expressive language. And also there is a component of the oral written language. The oral written language is specifically what I am hearing. Am I going to translate it on a piece of paper? Okay. So can I put my thoughts appropriately and clearly on a piece of paper? And that is related to communication. Communication, as we all know, is key. Right. Communication Absolutely. Will affect their reading. If there are speech problems, it may affect their reading. They may not be understood if they are given the assignment to read to the classroom. You have to have those scenarios. So if there are those needs, then that speech therapy need is there to address those concerns.
No, absolutely.
And there are many, many, many layers of the speech therapy to be provided for those. My child's speech communication or language, I shouldn't say language, but speech impairment, it is within the expressive. The receptive, she understands what you telling her, but for her to encode it or give it to you as you expect it, it's not happening. So there are delays, and that's what the speech therapy is working on. So it's involving a whole lot. And also there is a little social emotional component. She gets anxious. Okay, I know what I'm supposed to say, but I'm anxious. I don't want to say it. And I'm not relating to the person. That's social emotional. There is all the time overlaps.
So with overlaps, how are is the social worker and the speech therapist working together?
Great. I was expecting this question. Thank you.
I try.
Thank you. There are pieces in the IEP of collaboration between the service providers and the teachers. And that's when they are going to talk about, okay, I'm providing this piece and you are providing that piece. Is it going to help? Because the services provided is to bridge the gap and make the student successful, right? So when they are talking together, let's say speech pathologists and social workers are talking together and says, oh, I don't see Johnny is engaged in a conversation. Then the speech pathologist said he has difficulties pronouncing words.
So that might be why he's not engaging.
Right. That's that collaboration needed. So social worker will provide possibly her services right after the speech therapist, because it has to be a correlation between the services on time. I'm looking at it in the space and also in time. When I say the space, if the kid is receiving one-on-one speech therapy, for example, I would suggest right away they go to a social worker if they have pronunciation difficulties that is causing a social emotional issue. Make sense?
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
we have to really, it's like a puzzle, and we have to put the pieces together. And each one of them has to be put in place to complete that picture. And that picture is the access to general education curriculum. So they can be overlapped and they can go under the collaboration piece in the IEP.
Now, could you also, because in our beautiful, beautiful cloud, I forgot to add transportation
And nurse.
and nurse. So could you kind of explain to us what, first of all, transportation. What do we mean when we're talking about transportation? How does that pertain to the student?
Well, it is a related services for the student to access his instruction, his classroom, so they need transportation to get to and from school. Okay? But sometimes we kind of mix up things and we say, oh, my child have a disability, and the parents are living like 2 doors down. Literally, we have to take in consideration those, spatial things and distance. Now, there are policies within each school district. Parents are highly encouraged to ask about those policies of transportation. Because sometimes the team does not understand the layers of the student disability. If we talk about transportation, folks, please, safety is not only one measure to access that service.
So when you say, what do you mean by safety?
Well, there are parents whose children may have an IEP for one for one service, and they said, well, no, we need transportation because he has an IEP. It is not safe. It is not one measure to
like safe how? What do
safe.
we mean?
Well, I'm crossing. My child is attending a school where there are some safety concerns and activities of safety concerns.
So it's not necessarily safety to like the child, but safety of maybe that particular community.
Correct.
Okay.
So that cannot be literally taken in consideration, because here is the deal. You said it earlier, it's individualized.
Okay.
So when we talk about safety, is my child going to be safe going to and from school? That does not count, because that is outside of the school premises and outside of the instructional time. Safety within a child, like some kids, including mine, they may have some safety concerns to get to and from school within the school premises.
So give me an example of like, it doesn't have to count for every child, but a safety issue for a child who may need transportation services. What's a safety issue?
I would like
An
the call,
example.
look, the call that we got today. The kid has an accident last year in the bus,
Okay.
and she broke her leg, and there is aftermath of that accident. The school is not providing the transportation, and we talked about, okay, she cannot walk. It's unsafe for her to walk because the foot is in a cast to today. Because there is, that aftermath accident in the bus. Now, last year they provided transportation. They said this year, no transportation. She may just have to walk, but she's walking about 1.5 miles.
Okay.
She is a small kid, so that is a safety. First of all, she may be late, not to get in time.
Okay.
And the safety for her health, because she's wearing that cast on her foot. It is not safe for her to walk on that foot. She has an IEP. The disability is adversely impacting her learning, including that piece of safety. She cannot hear well, she cannot process, she does not talk, then it is unsafe for her to be, walking. That's one of the pieces that we have to take in consideration. But activities in the community, it is not considered. So it is a related service that is provided for those who needs it. Focus, make sure that you get the policies. That's the only way. How transportation is provided within your school district, and how that piece of transportation provided within the disability, for student with disability. Do know that transportation is a related service within the package of special education for those who needs it.
Okay, and I would love to dig into that a little bit deeper, but we are coming down to our last 4 minutes, and I wanted to give you the opportunity to explain what do we mean by nurse/medical issues when we're discussing related services in the IEP.
For those who need nurse services, they can fall under the medical. There are kids who have asthma and they need, those medical treatments, or diabetes. They need, that blood sugar monitoring,
Right.
Whatever the case may be medically, the nurse can help. Some kids, they take medication in the morning and midday to function. So the nurse may monitor and help. And keeping the medical record is very important. That's one of the functions that the nurse are doing. There are also beyond the scope of medical needs that the nurse can provide. An example of the nurse services that I have witnessed in a high school, at which I was so impressed and amazed. This nurse, she's going above and beyond and providing biology within this young woman's body to teach her how her body is not correlated and coordinated because of certain things that happen, with the medication. And she is teaching her how to self-regulate. She's collaborating, the collaboration piece.
So is that written in her IEP?
It is written. The parent requested it. And they were very, very informed parent. And I was so impressed when I saw that goal. And it was literally a goal that I've seen within the nurse services, that she's teaching her how her body reacts with the medication, side effects. She is teaching her to identify those symptoms and talk about it to somebody, instead of, just, kind of being slouchy and being tired, and she looked like lazy. And they are teaching her to identify those things. And I was like, whoa, this is really good.
Yeah.
And she's collaborating with the occupational therapist and social worker. And, of course, the teacher. I was really impressed. And I saw that is beyond the scope of what is the normal, quote, unquote, and I'm sorry to say this, normal services provided by nurses. But there is more than that. It is based on the need of the student. I even see nurses in certain areas of high school, they are helping the student to keep up their appointments. And I was impressed. And that was in the accommodation portion, like, hey, you have medication, right? And that was also replicated in their transition plan. It was fascinating.
Wow.
Fascinated.
I mean, and that's fantastic, because when you think about, this IEP team and, these various related services, these are all people talking to each other. So it's not like each person is in their own little bubble. For example, the speech therapist is on their own, the social worker is on their own. Everybody's working collaboratively, and that's kind of like what you want when you are when you're working with your IEP team. Is everybody's working together. Well, we're coming down to our last 10 seconds, and I want to thank you again, Zabita,
You
for
are very
helping us
welcome.
clear up a lot of information and misconceptions about related services. My name is Paula Wills, and you've been watching FRCD on CAN TV. Have a great week.
Thank you.